My name is Serena, and I never imagined I would propose something like this to my husband Filippo. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing, while for us it is fundamental. After more than 10 years of marriage, our relationship had always been solid, harmonious without major upheavals. Yet, recently, a strange sensation crept inside me, a mixture of dissatisfaction and curiosity. An underground desire that whispered forbidden words in my ear. The fantasy of couple swapping began as a fleeting thought, an unexpected idea that crossed my mind at the most unthinkable moments. At first I tried to chase it away, convinced that it was just a whim destined to fade away. But day after day that thought became more insistent. It took root within me until it became a subtle obsession, an idea I could no longer escape. I didn't know how Filippo would react. He had always been an open and understanding man, but such a proposal could have shocked him. Yet one evening, while we were on the sofa, with our hearts beating fast and our hands damp with anxiety, I gathered courage and spoke to him. His reaction took me by surprise. There was no dismay in his eyes, nor immediate rejection. On the contrary, he seemed almost intrigued. After a few moments of reflection, he decided that he wanted to try, that he wanted to explore that new frontier with me. After weeks of research and careful selection, we found a compatible couple, Marco and Serena. We met in an elegant restaurant for an introductory dinner, an opportunity to examine each other, to understand if that idea could take shape in the real world. Tension electrified the air. Every word seemed to have a different weight. Every look was a secret message. Their manners were confident, relaxed, as if such situations were something natural for them. Filippo and I, on the other hand, tried to hide our nervousness behind studied smiles and light words. As the evening progressed, the distance between us narrowed. The laughter became more real, the looks more intense. A subtle game of seduction hovered between the four, a silent dance in which the rules were not written but perceptible. By the time it was time for dessert, the tension had become almost palpable. Serena gave me small glances full of implications, while Marco observed Filippo with an interest that went beyond simple conversation. It was Serena who took the initiative. With a faint smile, he proposed that we move to their house, an invitation that left no room for interpretation. Filippo and I exchanged one last look before accepting. The car ride was a mix of excitement and nervousness. My heart pounded in my chest as if I was about to cross an invisible border, one of those that once crossed changes everything. Once we arrived, we settled into their living room. Serena poured a drink, a wine that tasted like unspoken promises. Words began to lose importance, leaving room for gestures, looks that spoke for themselves. Marco approached Filippo while Serena slid her hand over mine, caressing it with surprising delicacy. His skin was warm, soft, and the way our fingers intertwined felt so natural it made me hold my breath. I felt myself slipping into a bubble outside of time, a place where everything else no longer existed. Filippo was there in front of me, but in those moments it was as if the whole world had been restricted to that hand that caressed me, to that electric current that insinuated itself under my skin. Marco and Filippo studied each other, their gazes full of unexpressed questions. There was a slight hesitation in Filippo, an uncertainty that I could have interpreted as an alarm signal. Yet that hesitation of his didn't stop me. On the contrary, it fueled the thrill of the unknown even more. Serena's voice brought me back to reality, a whisper full of malice that sounded like a caress on the skin. He asked me if I was really sure. At that moment, I looked for Filippo's gaze, looking for an answer in him that I couldn't give myself. But his eyes gave me no certainty. It was an enigmatic expression, almost a silent challenge. I realized that the decision was mine alone. Part of me wavered, while another was irresistibly drawn to what was about to happen. Marco interrupted that dense silence with a sentence that made the air vibrate. Swapping, he said, wasn't for everyone. It required trust. Absolute trust. His words dug into me, insinuating themselves into corners of my mind that I had avoided exploring until then. Did I really trust Filippo? And did he trust me? A slight tremor ran through me, but it wasn't fear. It was excitement. It was the thrill of something new, forbidden, irresistible. Filippo spoke with a decisive voice, declaring that the trust between us was solid. But there was a shadow, a subtle nuance in his tone that did not escape me. Was he trying to convince them? Or himself? Marco smiled, his gaze a silent provocation. This was a test, an uncharted territory to be crossed with courage. The risk was real, but precisely for this reason the attraction became even more intense. I felt suspended on a thin thread over an abyss. Just one step and everything would change forever. And in that moment I realized that part of me wanted to find out at any cost. Serena came even closer. Her arm touched mine with a studied delicacy. The heat of her skin left a trail of subtle shivers in my wake. In a soft and enveloping voice, she confided in me how it had been strange for her and Marco at the beginning, how nervousness had taken over, just as it was happening to us at that moment. But then, once they let go, they discovered parts of themselves that had remained hidden until then. There was an implicit promise in his words, an invitation to strip away all hesitation and discover something new, something forbidden. It wasn't just curiosity that pushed me forward. The desire to understand how far I was willing to go, and above all, how far Filippo would dare to follow me, was growing inside me. I looked at him and I read something unknown in his eyes, a mixture of excitement and a slight, almost imperceptible shadow of jealousy. He was torn just like me, torn between the lure of desire and the fear of the consequences. Marco observed us attentively. His low, deep voice glided through the air like a hypnotic caress. His gaze danced between me and Filippo, trying to decipher our most hidden thoughts. None of us spoke, but the silence only underlined the fact that an invisible threshold had already been crossed. The room seemed to breathe with us. Every movement, every blink, every breath merged into an atmosphere full of anticipation. Serena continued to touch me with almost imperceptible touches, her eyes dark, full of unspoken promises. Marco, next to Filippo, stared at him with an intensity that left me breathless. Filippo gave me a fleeting look, as if he was looking for an answer in my eyes, as if he wanted to understand how far I was willing to go. I felt his gaze boring into me, a silent question suspended between us. Marco's voice crept into our minds, his tone complicit and warm as he refilled the glasses. The dark wine slid into the glasses with a liquid and enveloping sound. His words hinted at something deeper, the idea that certain experiences allow you to see your loved one in a new light, to discover unexplored sides, unspoken desires. And you, how far would you have gone? Do you think certain experiences can really strengthen a bond, or destroy it forever? Tell me yours in the comments. Serena's hand rested on mine, the warmth of her skin melding with mine. It was as if every touch was designed to start a fire under my skin. Marco's words continued to resonate in my mind, leaving me suspended between fear and excitement. Philip looked down at his glass, his voice barely a whisper. He had never been in a situation like this, yet there was a note of vulnerability in his tone that took me by surprise. For the first time, I saw him uncertain, torn between instinct and rationality. Serena smiled slightly, reassuringly, implying that there would be no rush, no pressure. Yet every movement, every look, every touch told a different story. The desire grew. It insinuated itself under the skin. It became something alive, burning. Philip looked at me again, a flame in his eyes that I had never seen before. What was he feeling? Fear? Excitement? Or both? Serena moved closer again, the distance between us closing to the point where I could feel her breath on my skin. My heart accelerated. The tension was almost tangible, like a wire stretched on the brink of breaking. Then Marco leaned towards Philip. I noticed the flash of surprise in his eyes, as if he hadn't expected that direct gesture. His hand rested on Philip's shoulder, with an apparent casualness that hid much more. Sometimes you have to dare. You have to take risks to find out how far you are willing to go. Those words hit me like a wave. My heart pounded as the line between hesitation and desire blurred. I knew that if I took that step, there would be no turning back. But that was the point. Did I really want to go back? Serena touched my face with her fingers. Her gaze delved into me, looking for an answer that I myself didn't know how to give. I heard his name touch my lips, a barely whispered whisper. Inside me, a tumult of emotions, the euphoria of discovery, the fear of losing what I knew, the irresistible call of the unknown. I didn't know what I really wanted, but I knew that whatever it was there, just a breath away, ready to overwhelm me. I looked at Filippo, searching his eyes for an answer, a sign that would tell me if he was really ready to face all this with me. In that instant, all doubts vanished. It was a total abandonment, a surrender to the desire that had grown within us, without us even realizing it. Philip nodded slowly, as if he were still trying to hide a last bit of hesitation. Then he shook Marco's hand, a light gesture but full of meaning. The tension that had been hovering in the air until that moment was transformed into a hot shiver, a shock that shook every certainty. Serena watched me. Her eyes shone with a sweet, almost childish mischief. He touched me with his fingers, slowly, as if he wanted to prolong that wait, make that moment even more intense. His hand slid up my neck, then down my shoulder, leaving a trail of heat that set my skin on fire. Our gazes intertwined, and in that silence full of expectations, it almost seemed to feel our thoughts overlapping, confusing, uniting in a common desire. Marco approached Filippo, and I saw him stiffen for a moment, and then let go when the other man's hand touched his face. It was an unexpected, intimate gesture, a fragment of vulnerability that I had never seen in him, and the most surprising thing was to realize that I didn't feel jealous, just a deep curiosity, a desire to discover every hidden nuance of Filippo, every side of him that had escaped me until then. Serena got even closer. Our faces were so close that I could feel her breath touching my lips. My heart was pounding in my chest, and for a moment I wondered if I was really ready for all this, if I was capable of completely abandoning myself to that experience. But when his lips touched mine, all thoughts dissolved. The kiss was light, almost imperceptible, but it left a trail of electricity on my skin. The room seemed enveloped in a soft light. The sounds had become muffled, as if the whole world had disappeared, leaving us suspended in that moment of pure intensity. Filippo and Marco had moved on the sofa, and I observed them as they studied each other, with slow and almost ritualistic movements. Filippo gradually relaxed, letting himself be guided by Marco, while I felt Serena's hand sliding along my arms, drawing me even closer to her. We moved together in an instinctive dance made of touches, glances, tension-filled waits. Every caress became a secret language, a way of communicating without words, of exploring something new, forbidden, electrifying. At that moment, I forgot everything else. Filippo, Marco, the world around. There was only Serena and me, wrapped in that bubble of desire, in a game of temptation and surrender. Time seemed to have dilated. Every movement accentuated the connection that was being created between us. I knew that I was crossing a border from which it would be impossible to go back. that that night could change my relationship with Filippo forever. Yet this was precisely what made it so special, so intense, so intoxicating. Filippo and Marco joined us, our bodies touched, intertwined in an intimate circle where every gesture was part of a secret and shared ritual. When my eyes met Philip's, I saw something new in him, a spark of emotion, a mixture of desire and understanding that made me feel closer to him than ever. In that instant, every fear, every hesitation, every doubt vanished, leaving room only for that night, that moment in which we decided to abandon ourselves completely to each other. When the first glow of dawn filtered through the windows, the room was immersed in an eerie silence. Serena and Marco greeted us with a knowing smile, while Filippo and I returned home in a silence that did not weigh, but which seemed to contain a new understanding. He drove, absorbed in his thoughts, while I watched the world pass by behind the window, reliving every moment, every look, every touch. When we got home, we sat in the kitchen. There was no need for words. Filippo looked at me. In his eyes there was an unexpressed question, a silent reflection on everything that had happened. It was then that I understood. That night had not only revealed parts of ourselves that we didn't know, but it had also strengthened something deep between us. We had crossed a border that seemed insurmountable, but instead of losing each other, we had found ourselves. Filippo took my hand, shaking it gently. In that gesture, I felt a silent promise, a bond even stronger than before. I knew that that night would remain a secret, a unique and unrepeatable experience. But I also knew that on that secret we could build something new, something even more authentic. If you want to receive new videos of the series, write, "I want the sequel" in the comments. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to receive a preview of future publications. Thank you.